The first weeks in Oak Hollow Estates were supposed to be quiet. That was the reason I moved there. After years of working cases that left me sleepless and paranoid, I wanted stillness. The house was modest, a brick rancher with a wide porch and an acre of backyard that backed into the woods. My only companion was Ranger, my Belgian Malinois, whose ears never missed a sound and whose loyalty ran deeper than blood. But I learned quickly that Oak Hollow wasn't quiet. It was controlled. Her name was Karen Whitfield, and she was more than just the HOA president. She was a queen with a plastic crown, and every neighbor bowed whether they wanted to or not. I saw it on move-in day. As I unloaded boxes from my truck, she appeared, clipboard in hand, her cardigan pressed, her blonde bob cut sharp as glass. She gave me the kind of smile you'd find on a porcelain doll, pretty, but hollow. "Welcome to Oak Hollow, Mr. Cole," she said, her eyes flicking past me to the truck, the boxes, and finally Ranger, who stood watch at my side. "I'm sure you'll find life much easier here if you join the association." Her voice was honey, but her words were nails. I gave her the kind of polite nod you give a stranger you don't plan on seeing again. "Thanks. But I'm not interested." For a split second, the porcelain cracked. Her smile faltered, just slightly, before returning, whiter this time. "Everyone joins," she said softly, then handed me a packet thick as a phone book. "Read this over. We'll talk again." I never opened it. The letters started appearing in my mailbox a week later. Notices typed in sterile font, mandatory HOA dues. Compliance expected. Then came the fines, fabricated charges for things I never did. Unapproved fencing. Improperly maintained lawn. Unauthorized animal ownership. Ranger, apparently, was not HOA approved. I ignored them all. But silence in Oak Hollow doesn't mean peace. It means someone's waiting. Watching. That's why, when Ranger stiffened beside my bed one sticky summer night, I was awake before the first knock. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the kind that rattled the frame, hard, fast, demanding. Ranger growled low, the kind of sound that said he was seconds away from tearing through the door. I slid out of bed, barefoot on hardwood, and reached for the shotgun propped in the corner. Habit, muscle memory. I didn't like carrying guns anymore, but I knew better than to ignore instinct. The knocks came again. Louder. I moved to the door, shotgun angled low, and peered through the peephole. 4 men stood on my porch. Not neighbors. They didn't belong here. Leather jackets in the dead of summer, baseball caps pulled low, cigarettes glowing faint in the dark. Their stance wasn't casual, it was predatory. I cracked the door, just enough for them to see me. The tallest one stepped forward, smirk carved across his crooked nose. "You Ethan Cole?" I didn't answer right away. Ranger growled louder, teeth flashing in the gap. "That's me," I said finally. "Karen sent us," the man said, his voice gravel and smoke. "Says you're not playing ball." That ain't neighborly. The way he said Karen was almost reverent, like she wasn't just a HOA president but something more. "Here's the deal," another thug chimed in, his hand flexing near his waistband. "You sign the papers, you pay the dues, this all goes away. Don't make it harder than it has to be." I let the silence stretch. The only sounds were Ranger's growl and the buzzing of cicadas outside. Then I cocked the shotgun with a slow, deliberate click. "You boys have 3 seconds to get off my porch." The smirk faded. The man with the crooked nose tried to hold his ground, but I could see the twitch in his jaw, the way his eyes darted to the barrel. "Look, buddy, don't be stupid," he said, raising his hands halfway. "We're just..." He didn't finish, because Ranger lunged forward, snapping his teeth inches from the man's hand. The porch light caught the fear in his eyes before he stumbled back. I raised the shotgun higher, steady. 1. The air grew thick, heavy. Even the cicadas seemed to stop. 2. That broke them. The 4 of them bolted, tripping over each other in their rush down the steps. Ranger barked, the sound booming through the still night, chasing them all the way to the black SUV parked at the curb. Tires squealed, headlights flashed, and in seconds they were gone, swallowed by the darkness of the street. I stood in the doorway, shotgun steady, Ranger at my side, both of us staring at the retreating red taillights. The night was quiet again, but not peaceful. Quiet like the silence before a storm. I locked the door, secured the windows, and sat in the living room with Ranger at my feet, listening to every creak of the house until the first gray light of dawn touched the blinds. This wasn't about dues. This wasn't about rules. Karen had just sent muscle to my house in the middle of the night. That meant this was war. And if Karen Whitfield wanted a war, she was about to learn that she'd picked the wrong man. The morning after the midnight knock, I stepped onto my porch with a mug of black coffee, Ranger sitting at my heel. The neighborhood was quiet in that curated, suburban way, lawns trimmed to regulation, cars shining like showroom models. But the quiet wasn't peaceful. Not anymore. Karen Whitfield stood at the edge of my lawn, framed by the rising sun. Pastel cardigan. Sunglasses. Coffee mug in one hand, clipboard in the other. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. She just stood there, watching me with an expression that was part curiosity, part challenge. She took a slow sip, set her mug down on the hood of her Lexus, and turned without a word. The message was clear: I know what happened last night. This isn't over. The next few days were an exercise in tension. My mailbox filled with more fines and warnings, each letter colder, more aggressive. Ranger picked up new scents along the fence line, men lingering where they didn't belong. At night, I noticed headlights pausing too long near my driveway, engines idling before disappearing. By the fourth night, I had my shotgun within reach no matter where I was in the house. That was the night it stopped being games. It was close to 2 a.m. when Ranger's low growl pulled me from uneasy sleep. He padded to the back door, hackles raised. I followed, shotgun in hand, every step quiet against the hardwood. Through the kitchen window, I saw them. 3 shadows creeping around my truck. The metallic glint of tools under the pale moonlight told me all I needed to know: they weren't kids pulling a prank. I flicked off the safety, stepped onto the porch, and racked a shell. The metallic clack-clack cut through the night. Back away from the truck, I called out, my voice calm but edged with steel. For half a heartbeat, they froze. Then one bolted. Another cursed under his breath, fumbling toward the fence. The third wasn't fast enough. Ranger exploded off the porch like a bullet, a blur of muscle and fury. He hit the man hard, driving him into the wet grass. The thug screamed, trying to scramble free, but Ranger had him pinned, teeth bared just inches from his throat. I strode down the steps, shotgun leveled, and stopped over him. The porch light illuminated his face, gaunt, pale, tattoos curling up his neck. Not a neighbor. Not some random drifter. This was a professional criminal. Don't, I warned as his hand twitched toward his pocket. The barrel of the shotgun rested on his chest. What's your name? His breath came in panicked bursts. Derek. Derek Myers. All right, Derek. You're going to tell me exactly what you're doing on my property. He licked his lips, eyes darting to Ranger, whose growl vibrated deep in his chest. I was paid, man. That's all. Just paid. By who? He hesitated. I pressed the barrel harder. Karen, he blurted. Karen Whitfield. She's got money, she's got dirt on people. She said you're a problem, that you won't play along. Said she needed you gone. Gone. Not convinced. Not bullied. Gone. I zip-tied Derek's wrists with the spare I kept in the garage and called the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Hawkins arrived 20 minutes later, red and blue lights flashing across my lawn. He was a broad man with thinning hair, his uniform straining against his gut. He stepped out of his cruiser with a slow sigh, like responding to a violent trespass at 2 a.m. was just another inconvenience in his night. What VE we got here? He asked, voice tired. Caught him breaking into my truck, I said. Said Karen Whitfield paid him to do it. The sheriff looked at Derek, then at me. His eyes flicked to the shotgun still slung at my side, then back to Derek. His jaw tightened. Before I could press further, headlights cut across the lawn. Another car pulled up. Out stepped Karen Whitfield herself, cardigan immaculate, hair perfect despite the hour. 2 HOA board members flanked her like loyal subjects. "What on earth is happening?" she said, her voice honey-sweet but dripping with venom underneath. I was woken by a call that there was trouble. I gestured at Derek, still tied on the ground. "You want to explain why your hired muscle is breaking into my truck?" Her eyes flicked over him with calculated indifference. Then she looked back at me, lips curved in a polite, dangerous smile. "Mr. Cole, I have no idea who this man is. If he claims otherwise, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." To my shock, Sheriff Hawkins crouched beside Derek and cut the zip ties loose. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. "Easy, Ethan," Hawkins said, his tone too smooth. "Looks to me like a vagrant. Probably wandered onto your property. Let's not turn this into something bigger than it is." Derek scrambled to his feet, rubbing his wrists, casting me a look halfway between apology and triumph. Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "You can't win this, Ethan. Join the association. Pay your dues. Or next time, no one will be here to intervene." She turned, her heels clicking on the driveway, her entourage following like obedient soldiers. Sheriff Hawkins gave me a look that said drop it, then followed her back to his cruiser. I stood there, fists clenched around the shotgun, watching the woman who thought she owned this neighborhood disappear into the night. The house was quiet again, but my mind wasn't. I sat at the kitchen table with Ranger at my feet, staring at the spread of letters and fines Karen had stuffed into my mailbox over the past weeks. They weren't just harassment, they were evidence. Add in Derek's confession, and it painted a picture that went far beyond petty HOA bullying. Karen had money. She had influence. She had the sheriff in her pocket. And now I knew she had ties to criminals. She wasn't just running a homeowners association. She was running a racket. I thought of the neighbors, the forced smiles, the whispered conversations, the way people kept their heads down whenever Karen walked by. They weren't just compliant. They were scared. I had wanted peace when I moved here. I wanted silence. But peace doesn't exist where corruption festers. Silence only feeds it. I rubbed my temples, fighting back the headache threatening to split my skull. I didn't want to be dragged back into this world. I had left it behind when I quit law enforcement. I had wanted nothing to do with badges, cases, or criminals. But Karen had forced my hand. By the time the sky began to pale with dawn, I had already made the decision. I pulled out my old phone book, the one I swore I'd never need again, and found the number. My hand hovered over it for a long moment before I finally pressed call. The line clicked. A familiar voice, deeper, calmer than I remembered, answered. FBI Special Agent Lucas Reed. I took a breath. "Lucas. It's Ethan. I've got something you're going to want to hear." There was silence on the line. Then a low, knowing exhale. "It's been a long time, Ethan. Tell me everything." And so I did. The FBI didn't move fast, but they moved sure. After my late-night call to Lucas Reed, the neighborhood began to change. At first, it was subtle. A sedan parked 2 blocks down with a man pretending to read the paper. A jogger looping the same street 3 times in one morning. A couple walking their dog who seemed to linger longer near Karen's house than anyone else. Most neighbors didn't notice. But Karen did. And so did I. Ranger caught the sense of strangers near our property line, ears pricking every time an unmarked car eased down the street. The bureau was circling, patient as wolves, letting Karen make the mistake of showing her fangs. Meanwhile, Karen kept pressing. More fines. More letters. More threats dressed up as polite reminders. HOA meetings suddenly mandatory, with whispers that anyone absent would face consequences. The other residents looked more haunted than ever, heads down, eyes flicking nervously to Karen's clipboard like it was a weapon. But she didn't stop there. Karen doubled down. The week after my call, I woke to find my mailbox ripped out of the ground, smashed to pieces. A spray-painted message across my driveway, join or leave. That was the night I stopped trying to hope for peace. That was the night I loaded every shell I had, checked every lock twice, and told Ranger, if they come, we don't hold back. It happened 3 nights later. The hum of engines broke the stillness just past midnight. Ranger was already at the window, his body rigid, growl low, and dangerous. I pushed aside the curtain. 2 black SUVs rolled slow and heavy up my driveway. Headlights cut across the lawn like searchlights. The engines idled, then doors opened. 6 men. All armed. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was an assault. Karen had finally played her hand. I grabbed the shotgun, chambered around, and positioned myself by the door. Ranger crouched low, a predator ready to strike. My heartbeat slowed, the way it always used to before things went loud in my old life. No fear. Just focus. The first thug kicked in the front door, splintering wood with a thunderous crack. He stepped inside, rifle raised. He didn't finish the step. The shotgun thundered once, and he dropped screaming, his leg shredded by buckshot. Chaos exploded. Shouts. Boots pounding against the porch. Glass breaking as others tried to climb in through windows. Take him down, someone roared. Ranger launched forward, teeth sinking into a man's arm as he stumbled through the kitchen window. The thug screamed, his weapon clattering to the floor. I moved on instinct, kick, twist, shove, sending him sprawling as Ranger held firm. Another burst through the back door, but I was already there. The shotgun roared again. He went down hard, howling as he crawled across the tile. For every one that fell, 2 more pushed forward. Muzzle flashes lit the rooms as bullets tore into drywall, furniture splintering under the assault. I moved through the house like it was a war zone, Ranger at my side, every corner a battlefield. And then, sirens. Distant at first. Then closer. Dozens of them. Red and blue lights cut through the night, flooding Oak Hollow in a kaleidoscope of color. The SUVs out front screeched as more vehicles blocked the road, unmarked but bristling with armed men in tactical gear. FBI. Drop your weapons, voices boomed through megaphones. The thugs froze, caught mid-assault, realizing they were boxed in. The roar of rifles being chambered outside drowned out their bravado. One by one, weapons clattered to the floor as black-clad agents stormed the lawn, moving with lethal precision. And there she was. Karen Whitfield, standing at the curb, her pastel cardigan glowing under flashing lights. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't even pretending anymore. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with fury as the FBI closed in. "This is a mistake," she shrieked. "I'm the president of this community. These are criminals. He's the dangerous one." She pointed at me, her manicured finger shaking. Special Agent Lucas Reed stepped forward from the pack, calm as stone. "Karen Whitfield, you are under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy, solicitation of violence, and obstruction of justice." 2 agents grabbed her arms. She thrashed, her voice rising to a shrill scream. "You don't know what you're doing. I own this neighborhood. You'll regret this." Her words cut into the night, but no one listened. Neighbors had crept out of their houses, huddled in robes and slippers, watching their self-appointed queen dragged away in cuffs. And for the first time since I moved in, I saw relief in their eyes. When the last thug was hauled off and the flashing lights dimmed, silence settled over Oak Hollow. The kind of silence that wasn't forced, but earned. I sat on my porch, Ranger at my side, both of us coated in sweat, dust, and gunpowder. My hands shook slightly as I set the shotgun across my lap, but it wasn't fear, it was the adrenaline bleeding out, leaving only exhaustion. Lucas approached, pulling off his tactical vest, his expression unreadable. "You could have told me sooner," he said. I gave a tired smile. I wanted peace. Thought I could handle it myself. He shook his head, but there was a glint of respect in his eyes. "Well, you handled it. And you brought down a damn extortion ring in the process." We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the crickets return, the faint hum of agents packing up evidence, neighbors whispering behind closed doors. Karen's looking at a long list of charges, Lucas finally said.
Federal time. She won't be running anything again.
Good, I said simply. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, then stood and walked toward his team. I looked down at Ranger, whose head rested against my leg, his amber eyes still alert even in exhaustion. I scratched behind his ears, and he let out a heavy sigh, the kind only a dog can. The neighborhood was free. For the first time since moving to Oak Hollow, the air felt light. But I knew peace was fragile. Evil always finds cracks to seep through. And if it ever tried to take root here again, Ranger and I would be ready.